All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Orange Crush podcast. David, something's happening tomorrow. I think it's pretty significant. We'll get into it. I think there's a horse race maybe. Someone will have their rent bet on it. But no, all jokes aside, Clemson and SMU are squaring off in the ACC Championship. As you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Clemson, it's winning in. SMU, it's win you're in or lose, and maybe a toss-up with Alabama. We'll talk about all of that. With the
Roll Tide. That's what the committee says. Roll Tide.
Oh, my goodness. That'll be something. Selection Sunday will continue to be just insane, regardless of whether the bracket is set or not. David, I understand you wanted to shout somebody out before we got into the podcast of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. I had a get-together last night over at the Outdoor Lab with some people in the provost office. Clemson historian Otis Pickett, who does a great job there on campus. His mom apparently listens to the podcast back home. So shout out to Marty Westbrook Pickett. She apparently is a fan, and I just want to give a shout out to her. Your son Otis, one of my good friends, we were doing a lot of nerd talk last night about the American Revolution, and then he's got a book coming out. He's going to write a biography on Thomas Green Clemson. He does a great job for the university. So shout out to Mama Pickett. Thanks for listening.
Go. Shout out. You know, you mentioned that Revolutionary War, that like is anniversary's coming up or something, because they advertised it at one of the football games this year, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And then I kept seeing it crop up on street signs as I was driving around Clemson. And is there something like happening specifically in Clemson? Because this is actually kind of fascinating.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know. Sometimes the football games, I go head down and don't really pay attention to what's going on around me.
There we go. Well, David, beyond Revolutionary War talk or the fight for American independence, Clemson will be fighting for their playoff rights, securing a bid on Saturday against SMU. We got a lot to break down with this game. It's a really good SMU squad. And I think, David, before we get into the keys, I'd love to pose a question to you that I talked with Fax and Childress, a former guest of ours on this podcast, that I'd argue Saturday is Dabo Swinney's most important ACC championship game. With everything that's happened just this year, the narratives that have been built, sort of this decade about what Clemson can do in the big moments, I think Saturday presents a unique opportunity as, yes, there have been some sins that have transgressed over this year, but you can forgive a lot of them with a win and a trip to a playoff bid. Do you view that too as like, hey, Saturday is ultra important to maybe shift the narrative, or is it going to take maybe more than a conference championship to maybe quell some of the concerns of this fan base?
Yeah, I think some of those championship games, like the 2011 for a chance to go to the Orange Bowl, coming off of a loss to South Carolina, kind of like this one, that was important. Beating Virginia Tech that game, their quarterback Logan Thomas, I guess, maybe it was the quarterback that day. Anyway, that was an important one. This one is really important, and there's just so much on the line. And someone at Clemson got mad at me last year because I kind of downplayed the Gator Bowl a little bit, because we all get spoiled, right? You get spoiled with the playoff, you get spoiled with the big bowl games, then you get to the Gator Bowl and they're like, yeah, we have no events planned around this football game, just kind of show up on game day. Like, okay. And so for Clemson, this season, you kind of said at the beginning, this is a college football playoff team. The talent's there. You win, you're in the playoff. Maybe you have to go to Texas. Maybe you have to go to Austin, Texas, right? Maybe you have to go to Notre Dame. Maybe you get a bye, depending on what happens with Arizona State and Iowa State and UNLV and Boise. That's possible too. You lose, Pop-Tarts, Gator, Holiday Bowl. And is that going to be enough for people to kind of say, yep, here I am in that December 27th to the 30th time frame. Am I happy in Orlando? Am I happy in Jacksonville, when it was just right there for us?
I think, yeah, especially considering last year where you sort of knew no matter what, Clemson was headed to that kind of caliber of a bowl. Mm-hmm. And given the unique opportunity of the expansion playoff, I think a lot of people consider it comedic that some 3-loss teams are going to enter the playoff, but that's just what we're entering, that kind of territory. You might have 2 on Sunday afternoon with Alabama and Clemson. But hey, it's the opportunity you earn for. You go 7-1 in the league. As Swinney said it earlier this week, that Clemson didn't weasel their way into this. They earned it. whether you or not you agree with that, whether you see Mario Cristobal's utter collapse in November as something he's just characteristic, that's just Mario Cristobal there.
It is.
But that Klubnik run in Pittsburgh might secure Clemson a playoff berth. But it's all going to be played on the field on Saturday against this SMU team. David, just your initial impressions of SMU football this year. The new kids on the block within the ACC, their first year, I think this isn't like a stat that I dug up and nobody has, but each college football conference championship game, at least in the Power Four, all have an expansion representative, whether that's Texas, whether that's SMU, whether that's Oregon, or you have Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. How fascinating is that in year one? The newbies are claiming the rights for the championship game.
It's great. And SMU is not getting a full share of the ACC payout, which isn't a lot, but they're not getting a full share, right? A lot of fun stuff going on this weekend. And, talking about a 3-loss team, if Texas beats Georgia, that would be a 3-loss Georgia team. They're still getting in, right? I don't know what then happens. Do you keep it SMU in if they lose? Are you going to have 2 3-loss SEC teams? I don't know. And then, let me start this too before we get into SMU. I have cracked up at the TigerNet board the past couple of days because over the past, 4 years, 5 years since Trevor left, you have 2 distinct camps of Clemson fans. And I just want to touch on this.
Yeah.
You have the one that they call the Sunshine Pumpers. Then you have the others that they call themselves the realists. Others would say the Debbie Downers, right? And it's been, can you start a separate board for the pumpers? Can you start a separate board for the downers? Sometimes, some of them are called whiners, whatever. It's funny. And, the whiners and dumpers camp was smaller 4 or 5 years ago. Now it may be one of the more dominant group. Maybe they're even. I don't know. And so what are the differences? So the Sunshine Pumpers are the ones that are like, Dabo Swinney, greatest thing that ever happened to this program. Check. This is still the greatest year of Clemson football. Check. This is Clemson's 10th ACC Championship game. My 10th. Check. Still, hitting a lot of the goals. Check. And they say you shouldn't really complain. The dumpers and the whiners are like, oh my goodness, this doesn't look the way it looked, back during that run. Correct. That is also correct. There have been some coaching mistakes. You kind of scratch your head that didn't happen back then. Correct. Talent level, not the way it was back then. Correct. Defensive end, some of these other players across the board, not the same. Cade Klubnik's still not Trevor Lawrence. He's been fine this year. Do you have a Wayne Gallman or a Travis Etienne back there? You don't. Is there a Justin Ross out there? There's not. As good as Brenning still is, Jordan Leggett could still take over a football game. Right. So we get it. And, what I wanted to say is you're both right.
Yeah.
You're both right. This has to get better. Dabo has to go into the portal. The pumpers are right. Yes, this is still the greatest era. Yes, you should still be happy that all of this is going on. You should still appreciate everything that's happening. But to get back to where it was, it has to get better. So you're both right. That's my rant for the day.
That was David Hood rant of the day presented by
That's my rant.
Chick-fil-A
You're both
Clemson
right.
But yeah, I think both sides have an argument. You have a situation where you look at Ohio State right now, where they're 11-2, or I think they're going to be 11-2 to finish off the year. And it's like the place is on fire over there after losing to 7-5 Michigan, and they're hosting a playoff game. It's just fascinating to see the different conversations taking place with expectations. And Clemson, I think, this season in particular became a victim of its own success when you just beat the living you-know-what out of some of those inferior opponents that we saw in September and October. And so the thought process then goes to, oh, this is going to be a layup to get to the college football playoff. We just have to win the ACC. You got to get to Pittsburgh. And your path, at least to getting to this moment where we're talking about right now, was even regardless of what happens to South Carolina, if you take care of business in the ACC, you got a chance to be in the big dance. Ironically enough, they got to that point. It just wasn't, I think, how many envisioned it. You get the doors blown off of you against Georgia in the second half. You get the tail kicked out of you at Death Valley at night, and you lose a heartbreaker to South Carolina. I don't think many envisioned that being the 9-3. You had told people, hey, Clemson's going to go 9-3 this year. Okay, how? I think the Georgia loss was expected, but I think the results of Louisville and South Carolina, depending on who you ask, might have been a surprise of how it went. No one expected Lenore Sellers to be who he is in August. No one expected Isaac Brown to run all over Clemson in August. So I think both camps have an argument. And I think I always want to be a glass half full kind of guy. But I do think that whether you want to call someone a Debbie Downer or a sunshine destroyer, just pure evil, there is an argument that it isn't the same Clemson brand that we were used to seeing back when I was growing up in high school, middle school, watching Deshaun and Trevor. You and your almighty grace going to these playoff games where I enter the fray and it's the Gator Bowl. So hoping this year, man, I'm hoping.
It's your fault. It's your fault. Yeah,
it is. It is my fault. It is my fault. I joke with my sister. So she went to Clemson and she went from 2014 to 2020. And I was like, man, you picked the right time to go. She literally witnessed probably the greatest 6-year stretch in college football history for Clemson. And I come in and it's COVID and 3 losses every year. And it's like, oh man, like, where's it going to change? But hey, here we are with a chance for the college football playoff, David. You get to go to your billionth and I get to go to potentially to my first.
It's going to be fun. And SMU is an interesting team. They went through what I called their U part of the schedule early in the year. Their SMU, they opened with Nevada. They struggled a little bit. Then they played HCU, BYU, and TCU. And, once they kind of got through that, they were sitting there at, 3-1. And they had the loss to BYU, but then they blew out TCU, put up 66 points against the Horny Toads, the Horned Frogs in that one, beat up on a woeful Florida State team, escaped Louisville with a 7-point win, blew out Stanford, a game that Duke absolutely, SMU tried their best to let Duke win that football game. And Duke was like, no, we're just not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. Then they beat Pittsburgh rather handily. They beat Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. Not exactly, murderer's row, kind of like Clemson, right? The difference is they took care of business in their games and Clemson didn't. And it starts with Kevin Jennings on offense. That running back, Brashard Smith. Hey, Clemson fans, you remember him? You remember him?
Do they?
So he played, 3 or 4 years at Miami. He was a wide receiver coming out of high school. He had 18 carries in his time at Miami. Last time we saw him, Kitchens punched the ball out from Will Shipley at the goal line. And then Brashard took it 80 yards the other way, on one of the next plays on a run play and gets it punched out by Wiggins. Miami falls on it in the end zone, take a 7-0 lead. And that just kind of told us what kind of night that was going to be. He transfers to SMU. He's now an 1,100, almost 1,200 yard rusher. And their season really changed, Grayson, when they went to Kevin Jennings, quarterback.
Right. I mean, you saw at the beginning of the season, I remember watching that Nevada game just because it was, this is SMU's first look as you get to see the ACC logo on the field, which I thought was pretty cool in that first week. I think that was the second weekend of August or something. It was fresh off of the Georgia Tech victory over Florida State. And you saw him struggle a little bit with Preston Stone. And I think the staff at SMU deserves a ton of credit for recognizing that incredibly early and saying, we need to change now if we're going to be who we are. Clearly, They believe they were a playoff team. Many still believe they are right now. With Kevin Jennings coming in, I think a different style to Lenore Sellers. I think people will see the mobile dual threat thing and maybe get a little PTSD from last Saturday. Kevin Jennings is not going to brush off a Peter Woods tackle. This isn't Superman in the backfield there for SMU, but he still is a very athletic quarterback, more of a run to throw kind of quarterback where he's going to make plays outside the pocket to find his open receivers. This is a really talented SMU offense that thrives on creativity. And so for Clemson, it's going to be another challenge of staying on the keys that they've always hyped and preached this entire season. And I think for Clemson, the biggest concern for me is watching that South Carolina tape is, do they understand the contain pattern that sort of goes along with containing a dual threat quarterback? Because you saw Sellers escape, you saw some over pursuits. I think Clemson really needs to look at that tape and say, we need to correct this in practice this week. And I'm sure they have attempted at it. It's a big challenge, again, facing another mobile quarterback that presents plenty of problems.
Well, we saw Wade Woodass this week. Wade came over and showed us a picture of his leg. And, it was gnarly, right? It was ugly. A lot of bruising. And South Carolina, credit their coaches. They go to 3 wides. That takes Sammy Brown off the field. Wade's out there trying to chase people around. you just have to be better in that situation. And I get the coaching aspect of it. Wade is your older guy. He's your veteran. You want him out on the field. Probably not, going to use Sammy in that nickel situation if he hasn't practiced it a lot. You're not going to put him over at nickel Sam, but why not put Wade over there? I don't know what they could have done, but somebody needs to be over there in the dirt drawing up some plays, and we got to keep Sammy Brown on the field somehow, some way. Get off your tablet. Get over there and diagram something. Go make a play. Get off the That's my rant. That's another rant for me.
Get off the tablet. This isn't a 5 keys to a Clemson victory. This is just the 5 objects of distress from David Hood this weekend. Oh man.
And then you're watching the offense, and I get tickled at people who say, "Oh, this is the same offense, man. It looks the same." It's the same plays every time. It's the same plays from 3 years ago. Dabo's meddling. You don't know football. Hush. If you can't tell that this is an air raid system, look, there's only so many college football plays. Inside zone, outside zone, stretch, counter. Okay? You've got a lead here. How many route tree routes are – what are you going to do? Are there crossers? There's only so many plays. The fact that you run a wide receiver screen in this offense and you ran one under Tony Elliott doesn't mean it's the same offense. Hush. Another rant. Okay. I really wish Dabo would have interfered last week, because South Carolina kicks the field goal and you go, okay, now we need to simplify some things. Phil Maffa you're handing it to him. He's running it into the back of his offensive lineman and falling down. That's not working. How about go to the quarterback run here? How about go simple and get the ball out to your playmakers? Forget your play sheet. Forget what you put it down. Go all Steve Spurrier or go on a hunch. Whew. Okay. Rant's coming down now. I wish Dabo would have interfered and been like, you know what? Let's just go some quarterback run here. Let's not get ultra conservative and try and lose this football game. Let's get the ball out in space to our playmakers. And that, if you look at those keys, Grayson, those are the keys to beating SMU too.
It's a good thing you're not coming to Charlotte with me. I think you might blow a gasket if you hear something later this afternoon. But the Clemson really, I think the difference between this year and last year is they have the playmakers to operate in a successful manner. Antonio Williams is having a career year. Your freshmen, TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, both have proven they can win those one-on-one matchups in the boundaries. And that first half, there was a conceded effort from Klubnik, who identified the matchups very well. And you have the communication between Wesco. I know on that slant, Klubnik missed it, but Wesco was able to give Klubnik a little bit of a signal and acknowledgement between the two, saying, hey, I'm one-on-one here. I'm going to win this matchup. Wesco does, and Klubnik just misses the ball. I think Saturday against SMU, this has to be the game for the Clemson wide receivers, where you talk with Adam Randall in August saying he wants to bring back the wide receiver legacy at Clemson. This could be that game that projects that back on that trend where you have guys like Wesco and Moore against a smaller SMU secondary. Try to go win some one-on-one battles and then put Antonio in the middle and let him do what he's done all season. He's, I think, averaging at least 6 or 7 catches for the last couple games. He's been a monster on the field, practically unguardable in certain situations. And you might get Tyler Brown back this Saturday, depending on a couple things. Sweeney will be cryptic as ever. David, you may have something that contradicts it, but do you know, maybe not?
Well, no, I think you will see Tyler out there because you've lost Troy Stellato. He's gone now. Adam Randall has not really seen the field lately. You get Tyler out there. Dabo's like, yeah, he's out there running around. Doesn't mean you're going to see him out there for 30 or 35 snaps. Maybe you see him for 10 to 12. Maybe he's just an option for somebody. So, yeah, I do think that you see him out there. And here's the thing. Cade Klubnik has improved exponentially. Here we go. Here's another old man rant. Cade Klubnik has been fantastic at times. He has cut down on the turnovers. I think he has made just fantastic decisions at times. I do think that there are times when he's like, I need to be the hero here. Like last week, the check down to Maffa when you've either got to throw it away or throw it in the end zone, right? He's been really good. But I think what has been so frustrating, and this is where good quarterbacks turn into great quarterbacks, is that there have been times against Pitt, against Louisville, against South Carolina last week, where there are absolute layups for touchdowns.
Mhm.
And you need a soft touch on a quick slant, and he's throwing it like a bullet 30 yards downfield. That's got to be an area of growth for him, is realizing when and how to put touch on the football, lead a receiver, throw them open if you have to. And that'll be for probably next year. But they have to hit those layups this weekend.
It's that situational routine stuff that we've seen from Clemson not do in the moments that have been called for. You mentioned the slant to Bryant Wesco. There was also a throw in the first half to Wesco. I know it was a tougher throw over the top of a couple DBs, but Wesco was open and streaking down the field. He really, you watched Wesco on Saturday, rewatch the game. He dominated his matchup on the boundary. They tried to say, hey, we got the freshman receivers out here, and he took his lunch money. You can't say enough about what Wesco did on Saturday. I'm over here like freaking out in my own right. But against SMU, David, I think another thing that we got to point out is there has to be more Jay Haynes on Saturday. There just has to be. I think with what is transpired with Phil Maffa, there are certain comparisons that I'd like to make that I just shouldn't on this podcast of just the state of Phil Maffa right now. It's sad watching it. It is really uncomfortable just because he's hurting out there. There's a brace on literally every part of his body. And it is that I don't know who in our audience has played the new college football video game, but let me go on my own tangent here, is when you have the wear and tear, you have red marks that identify where, like, if they have an arm injury, it'll show you in between plays, like, hey, there's red right here. You need to sub him out. For Phil Maffa, the whole body is red. Like, get him out for a couple drives here and let Haynes, who's shown a couple pop steps here and there. I like what I've seen from Haynes. I think he can contribute at the P4 level. I just think they've grossly mishandled Maffa's usage in September and October, and it's really backfired in November, where a special player has really been driven into the dirt.
Yeah, that could be rant number 5 for me, but I will refrain.
I got one in.
You're one in. And Maffa's great. I mean, I love that kid. He is a warrior. He is a baller. He deserves to go out on his terms. And somebody said something to me earlier this week about Haynes. Well, he gets in and he has the false start. You're going to have to live with that until he gets more snaps. They have that one play, which was kind of the outside pitch play to Maffa. And he's not going to convert that. He's just not going to do it. He's not going to magically get healthy and convert that. Whereas you feel like Jay Haynes not only probably would have converted there, but he might have gone in for a score just because the kid's a lot quicker and faster. And, this isn't a Louisville offense that grinds it out. This is not an 80-play, 90-play type of an offense. In fact, I just wanted to go look it up. The largest number of plays that they have had this year, 77, in that 59-7 win against Houston Christian. But otherwise, it's 69, 61, 63, 65, 68, 64. Man, that's kind of some of those old Georgia Tech numbers, right? Back in the day with Paul Johnson, when, he'd run 62 plays and run it for 420 down your throat. Sure. And, they don't have wide receivers that are true game breakers. Roderick Daniels is probably their best guy, but they've got, 5 receivers with 25 catches or more. Kevin Jennings spreads it around, but you're right. Run first offense. Defense is all about stopping the run. 2.8 yards per carry allowed, first in the ACC. Less than 100 yards per game allowed, first in the ACC. Part of that is the fact that teams have been getting behind them, and they abandon the running game. Mm-hmm. Clemson almost now needs to go opposite of that. Clemson needs to go fast. Here's rant number 5. Hey, Klubnik, if you watch, he plays better when he's going fast.
100%.
When he's standing there looking at Garrett Riley for 52 seconds, it doesn't go well. Old man rant number 5. Here we are. We're just going to stare at the sidelines while the defense substitutes. What are we doing? Ordering a pizza? Candlesticks make a nice wedding gift. Got to go
We're going to
fast.
get to like 6 or 7. I think I'm going to have to change this podcast out of 5 rants to a Clemson victory over SMU, specifically brought by you.
It's so much fun to talk about this, and we're not coaches. I get that. These are just observations, and maybe if Dabo would let us come and sit in the meetings and go to practice, and we get a true inside look at the program, we'd have different opinions. That's never going to happen. No college coach is ever going to allow that. But yeah, Clemson needs to go fast. They got to run the football. That means Jay Haynes to me, or David Eziamume, or Jarvis Green, and you let Phil Moffitt do his thing. But don't ride him to death.
Please don't. Another thing that I would love to point out about SMU is that pass rush that they possess. It's going to be another week where you're going up against some pretty almost NFL caliber. Last week we saw that. Dylan Stewart is going to be a first-round draft pick one day. Kyle Kennard, no doubt, is going to be circulating around the top 30 of those mock drafts that'll come around this spring. A lot of NFL teams are going to want that talent, All-American for sure. And the Clemson offensive line held up incredibly well in pass pro. I think a lot of that's play design, trying to get the ball out quicker, which is a credit to the staff for figuring that out. But at the same time, you got to look at Tristan Lee, who's not 100% coming back off of injury. This offensive line goes from makeshift to back to form, and you saw that protection that I think fans raved over and the job that Matt Luke has done. There's not enough that can be said about what he's been able to do to transform this line. That's South Carolina's pass rush last year going up against this Clemson. I mean, you saw it in Columbia last year. It was a rough sledding for this offense. But once again, the offensive line is going to have to play its best brand of football in protecting Cade Klubnik and setting up some of these run gaps to allow this offense to be successful. The key is if they can do that and give Klubnik a clean pocket, I could see lots of points being scored on the board for Clemson if they can hold up once again against another really potent front seven.
Yeah, and this is an older front seven. I mean, you're talking about Cameron Robertson. He's played a lot of football. Isaiah Smith's played a lot of football. Elijah Roberts has played a lot of football. These guys are just they're old dudes. Jared Harrison Hunt. It's a group that they're not big on tackles. I think Harrison Hunt probably leads them with 35 or so. They're on the defensive line. He's the best, but you got a lot of guys that are kind of down in those lower, 20s and teens and their digits and stuff like that. They can still go get the quarterback, though. Isaiah Smith, the junior DN, 6.5. Joffin Harvey, he's got 6.5. Hunt's got 5. Roberts has 4. Robertson has 4. Kobe Wilson, the linebacker, you finally get to him, and he has 3, but he's 6. It's all about that defensive line getting pressure. I do like Clemson's offensive line in this matchup, though. As far as I know, they are healthy. Tristan Lee has had an extra week now. Marcus Tate has had an extra week. Walker Parks has had an extra week. I love what they did last week in that they would bring Harris Sewell in for a drive for Tate. And then Harrison Sewell would pop over and come in a drive for Parks. And then he'd come back over and he'd go in for Tate. So they rested those guys. I love that. Keep doing it this week.
Positive rant. Oh, my goodness. Here we go.
I have nothing bad to say about Matt Luke. Open your pocketbook. I don't care.
There you go.
If Matt Luke wants an NIL deal with Chick-fil-A, I'll set him up. Come on, Matt.
We have a sponsorship with Chick-fil-A. He should come on and talk about the love of chicken biscuits. I know I do. But David, as we wrap up this prediction preview podcast, yeah, you see it right there. Usually it's like not a shameless sponsor there. That's as good as it gets from yours truly, David Hood. David, something that's fascinating to me is all the potential options that could. I know someone out there is going to say that this is a jinx. That me talking about this potential week because it's a 50-50 shot for Clemson. Let's say Clemson wins on Saturday. Where do you want to go for the college football playoff? There's a lot of options out there. There's some fun trips to be had. Potentially a trip to Texas, potentially a trip to Eugene, Oregon, Happy Valley, back to Notre Dame. The next that's going to be that would be a fun trip there, or a trip to Atlanta in a bye, depending on what happens tonight with Boise State and UNLV. Is there one that just really you're like, if Clemson wins, I'd love to do this?
Okay, so there's different layers to this question, and I'll tell you what the coaches want. In the past, when Clemson's played in the ACC Championship, it's gone to playoffs. Clemson has played in the ACC Championship, and then they've been able to give their players a week off, right? Boom. Let's just take a week. Let's decompress. We'll come out. We'll stretch. And then we will start bowl prep on December the 15th, the 17th, whatever.
Can't do that.
And then they would leave, maybe Christmas Day or New Year's, whatever. And it would allow you those extra practices to get what Dabo would call the JV in, right? Get those redshirt guys, get them out there, get them in some scrimmages, get them some snaps. If you wind up playing that first playoff game, that is December the 20th, which means your season could end 5 days before Christmas. There goes all of the extra practices. There goes all the JV practices. From a coaching perspective, you go, put me in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Give me an extra couple of weeks to prepare to get these guys out there to let injuries heal. Now, from a sports writer perspective, give me the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
Okay.
Let me have that first round bye. As attractive as it is trying to get to Eugene, Oregon, on December the 20th, if they were to lose to Penn State or to go to Happy Valley or to go to Austin, Texas, man, great places. Would love to do it. Bucket list items. I've been in Darrell K. Royal Stadium in Austin, but that was a long time ago for a game against TCU. Would love to go back to that one, but man, give me that extra week. Let me have Christmas at home, and then let's get ready to go play in a playoff game in a great stadium like Atlanta, rather than maybe playing in 9-degree temperatures up in Happy Valley on December 20th.
Yeah, that'd be quite cold on December 20th. I think best case scenario for Clemson, Wade, they've just sort of had to go through injuries this month or through November. You want to take that bye. Mm-hmm. I don't see a world where UNLV wins tonight against this Boise State team. They're going to have to travel to the cold. They're a dome team. And I just don't see it. Ashton Genty, that feels like a Heisman Trophy ceiling performance for him potentially tonight. I know they've probably the voting has already taken place. David, you're a Heisman Trophy voter. So that's also really cool. But I just don't see UNLV winning tonight, so I think we're going to have to pick between the Clemson's going to be probably the 12th seed. Depending, the committee could surprise us and pick Clemson over Arizona State or Iowa State. I think that chance is greater if Iowa State wins on Saturday. We'll see. Regardless, though, ladies and gentlemen, it's win and you're in on Saturday night, and David Hood and I will be there to cover this thing.
I'm a big believer in UNLV.
I'm
saying they're going to win. I'm just saying I'm a believer in UNLV. I think they've got a shot out there tonight. I really do. And I am going to be fascinated. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to make those feral children of mine go to bed. And I have not voted yet. I always wait until the last possible minute because you look at it and Travis Hunter is probably the favorite, right? But man, I love that kid at Boise. And, I got an email from his SID this week, and I'm going to give you an incredible stat about Ashton Genty. He has 11 100-yard halves this year.
Wow.
He has 11 different halves where he has rushed for 100 yards. That's incredible to me.
That's really cool.
It's an incredible stat.
Barry Sanders-like.
It really is. And he has put that Boise team on his shoulders. Travis Hunter is incredible. That last outing that he had may have sealed it for him with the majority of the Heisman voters. Look, I'm a big fan of the quarterback in Army. He may get a vote because he's at Army. From me.
Go.
You know
love
what?
Of country.
Love the service academies. Love what he's been able to do. Love this time of year. And, we're going to find out tomorrow night. And I've been putting together the TigerNet prediction, and I'm going to tell you, last week, I think it was me and you and Ryan Cantor, we went South Carolina. TigerNet is split this week, almost right down the middle between SMU and Clemson. I'm picking Clemson.
I'm picking SMU. I think I'm going to take SMU. I think that may make the sunshine pumpers, as you call them on TigerNet, they're going to be upset with me. But I just have to see it to believe it with this staff and this team. When the big games have called for it this year, they haven't necessarily rose to the occasion. And even last week, they were the better team against South Carolina for about 35 minutes. And then even still, they found a way to shoot that. Excuse me, they were a better team for good 45 minutes, and then the last quarter, Sellers
and held the lead for 58 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yep. And so just I got to see it to believe it. If I'm wrong, we're going to the college football playoff, and that's fine with me. So I'll own it. I'm never going to shy away from that. So TigerNet, if you watch the end of this podcast or you look at the prediction, just hold off on the keyboard typing, and just when I'm wrong, come after me. There you go. That's what you do.
And my rants, I love it. It lets me get it off my chest. I love it. I love going on the rants.
And this has been, I think, one of our longest podcasts between the two of us. Hopefully your friend over there, her data plan doesn't get completely shattered by this episode, but we want to thank you all for watching.
We need to get Mama Pickett some internet down there in
Yeah.
Fairfield County. Like, we got to get her some internet.
We gotta help her out. Guys, thank you so much for watching this podcast, listening on Spotify. This has been 36 minutes of David screaming. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. We want to thank our sponsors for making these kind of episodes possible. I'll be heading up to Charlotte here shortly. Once this is posted, I will already be on the highway heading up there for Dabo Sweeney and Rhett Lashley's press conferences. David, where will you be tonight? We're combining our TigerNet staff powers and going
big
to
high school football
spots.
game going on. Big high school football game. Clemson commit Marcus Henderson playing in the upper state semifinals against MVP. That's Mountain View Prep. And Clemson running back target Jalen McGill. Don't think Clemson's going to get him. Got in too late on that one. We'll save that rant for another day. He may be too expensive anyway. We'll see. But a little high school action for me tonight. Can't wait.
Can't wait, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned to TigerNet tomorrow. It's going to be one of the bigger days this season, if not the biggest day, pending a potential playoff trip. Thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for our either playoff coverage or Gator Bowl coverage. Excited to bring you regardless.
Don't speak that into existence. No. Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Coach.
Well, join us for our coverage of Clemson heading to Texas for the
Okay.
first round of the college football playoff on December the 21st.
There we go. That's all you need to know. David's got the final word on that. He's got the better powers. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you've gotten to the 37-minute mark and you're not subscribed, there's a little button. It's free. Thank you guys as always. Take care. Travel safe to Charlotte.